again, everybody, and welcome to the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. I'm Zach Ewing, along with Reed Darcey and Toyloy TJ Brown, here to talk some LSU basketball today. Reed is the Advocate's women's basketball beat writer for LSU, and TJ is the men's basketball beat writer. So lots to talk about. It's a big week at the PMAC, guys. We got number 1 Auburn coming to face the LSU men Wednesday night, tomorrow night, and then number 13 Oklahoma facing off with number 7 LSU on Thursday night on the women's side. So you don't get back-to-back nights in one arena like that too often. It should be a pretty special week.
Yeah, it should be fun. I think the women, they played a couple ugly games recently, you know, when they went up to South Carolina and then came back, played Texas A&M on short rest. So hopefully the game on Thursday is a little cleaner, you know, a little smoother. Hopefully there's fewer fouls and fewer turnovers and all that. So it should be interesting. Oklahoma's a really good team. They like to play fast. They like their brand of basketball. So it should be fun to see a top 15 matchup in the PMAC.
Yeah, and on the men's side, obviously facing number 1 team, that's a game you always have to get up for. Auburn's been rocking out in the college basketball world. They have the best player, arguably the best player in the country. And yeah, it's kind of a privilege to play against a team that's known as the best. So LSU is coming off a really good effort in a loss to Alabama. And I think they'll be fired up to be back at home finally and to play against a top tier team.
Yeah, we're going to start there, I think. And by the way, I guess we didn't get Toyloy the message about hats today, although he has better hair than we do, so maybe that's just for the better. We're going to start there. Like this men's team, and we've talked about this, but this men's team is not a bad team. They're a pretty good team actually, but in the SEC, you've got to be a really good team to compete. And I think that this turnaround probably, TJ, is the biggest example yet of that, where you go to Tuscaloosa to face number 4 Alabama on Saturday, played a good game, lost by 7. But I mean, not a lot of people go in to Tuscaloosa and lose by 7. A lot of them lose by 27. But a loss is a loss, right? And then you come home and, oh, by the way, just as a little breather, you get number 1 Auburn coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in Tuscaloosa, made the drive first time in Alabama for that game, and that was a heck of an environment. I'm not sure how much it showed through the television screen, but that was a really raucous crowd. Even though LSU may not have the best record compared to their other SEC competitors, Alabama fans didn't care, and they just were super into it and was a bit very hostile, if I do say so, from pregame to during the game. But yeah, as far as how LSU has shown their progress, I expected them to lose. That's what most fans would say. But most fans assume that they'll be getting destroyed. I think the spread was minus 17.5 for Alabama. And obviously losing by only 7 points, that's a big difference. And LSU's effort and physicality was the reason for it. The first 5 minutes, Corey Chess already had, I think, 6 rebounds, and half of them were offensive rebounds. And he finished the game with a career-high 18 in the first half. This redshirt freshman who no one thought about before the season, for the most part, he had 15 rebounds in the first 13, 14 minutes of play against an Alabama team that has 3 6'11" players in their starting lineup. So he set the tone as far as just the pure aggression and physicality and really fearlessness to go against the number 4 team, number 1 or 2 offensive team in the country at that time, and really just don't care about the numbers, don't care about record, throw all that out, don't care about the environment, but really just challenge your opponent to the best of your abilities. A secondary reason that LSU did it really well. Jordan Sears had his best game in SEC play, 21 points and 6 assists. The turnovers did creep up a little bit, but he showed his mid-range game and his ability to be a facilitator, which hasn't been always as consistent. So yeah, the last game against Alabama was a really big sort of indicator that this team is not horrible. They just play against really, really tough competition, 10 teams in the SEC and the AP top 25 to give you an idea. And the teams that are just outside, they're top 30, top 40 caliber squads. And LSU is just battling. They're not giving up. They're really tough. They're really aggressive. And they have a new player, which we'll talk about later, in Trey'Dez Green, who looks like he could have an impact in terms of that physicality.
Yeah, TJ, you're right. I was watching that game. I caught most of the second half, and I could only help but imagine how things would have looked had LSU had Tyrell Ward and Jalen Reed. You know, I mean, having those 2 guys, I mean, 2 expected contributors, 2 rotation players, I don't know if the season would have gone differently with them. I don't know if they make much of a difference because, the schedule is what it is. But having those two guys, maybe you're more competitive and maybe you're a better team. I think I'd imagine just having Jalen Reed with the size and physicality inside, get more rebounds. And I'd imagine having Tyrell Ward having another shooter on the floor, right? That would have been huge to help this Alabama team. But it just goes to show that without those two guys, LSU is – they're competitive, even against a team like Alabama, that's one of the best in the country. So I was really impressed by them, even in a loss. But I could only imagine, how things would have looked had they had those two rotation guys who they lost earlier in the season.
Yeah, the what if game is definitely a dangerous game, and it's a scary, and it's one that can make some people disappointed. They also didn't have Victorious Miller, who's out with an ankle injury for that game. He's averaging 10 points per game. But yeah, no, I think maybe if those players were healthy and with Tyrell Ward, he stepped away due to mental health reasons, things would be different. But you can only play with the cards that you're dealt, and I think Matt McMahon is past that, and he's ready to just continue coaching the team that he has in front of him.
Yeah, I think, and Reed, you grew up in New Orleans. You went to LSU. Those of us who have followed SEC basketball for a long time, it is not normally like this. There's usually at least, you'll have a Kentucky or a Florida or a Tennessee who's very good when and it's been Alabama and Auburn the last couple of years, but like you usually also have 3 or 4 breathers in there. There's no such thing. And LSU does have the one win against Arkansas, but they've played pretty good. And I've used this analogy before, but it's like when you sit down at a poker table, if you can't spot the sucker, you are the sucker. And LSU is the team that other SEC teams look at and say, "Oh, we got LSU at home. We've got to win that one." And that's what it's been. And sometimes when you have that many good teams, right, it is injuries or things like that kind of decide who somebody's got to finish at the bottom. And right now, South Carolina and LSU are the teams. Arkansas is another one. They've lost a lot of close games. They've had some injury problems, and all of a sudden you look up and every night you're kind of up against it. So, pretty difficult time for the LSU men. Do want to let you know today's show is brought to you by Waste Pro Tiger fans. If you're planning a tailgate or event, keep your guests comfortable with portable toilets from Waste Pro. Call 225-744-6400 and mention the LSU Sports Insider for a special offer. And we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk on the women's side. As we mentioned briefly, big bounce back win for the Lady Tigers on Sunday against Texas A&M, and they have a big one themselves coming up Thursday against Oklahoma. We'll talk about that. We'll talk more about LSU Auburn and what the Tigers can do to pull off the upset, and we will go around the SEC all right after this.
Experience the convenience and cleanliness that Waste Pro brings to Mardi Gras, LSU tailgates, and festivals with our top-notch portable toilet services. Perfect for large crowds and community events. Join the countless satisfied families and organizers who trust Waste Pro to keep their gatherings spotless and sanitary. Discover more about our services and make your next event a success at wasteprousa.com.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
All right, welcome back to the LSU Sports Insiders. Zach Ewing talking some basketball with our advocate beat writers Reed Darcey on the women's side and Toyloy Brown on the men's side. Want to let you know that you can subscribe to the LSU Tigers at NOLA.com YouTube channel. I don't know who named that like 10 years ago, but it's a little bit of a word salad, but find it. You can find the LSU Sports Insider, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button while you're on the video. Easier to comment on YouTube, easier for us to see your comments. all of that stuff. And so we encourage you to do that. We're talking about a big week at the PMAC, and we the men get number 1 Auburn on Wednesday night. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Then the women get number 13 Oklahoma. And Reed, you and I had the post game show Friday night. LSU, kind of a hard fought loss at South Carolina. Lost by 10 points. Again, kind of like LSU men at Alabama, you fought hard, but ultimately didn't quite have enough against the national title favorite. To come back to me less than 48 hours later, having to travel back home against a Texas A&M team that had an extra day of rest and didn't have to travel as far to your home arena, to me that said a lot. And I know A&M's not one of the top teams in the league or anything, but they're also a good enough team to beat you on the right day, and the Tigers didn't let that happen.
Yeah, and A&M's always a physical, really tough defensive team, right? And they really did a good job muddying the game up, I think, making it tough on LSU, particularly in the half court. It was a very physical game. It was a very ugly game, lots of fouls, lots of missed shots. LSU has now shot, they shot 30% against South Carolina, and then they shot 32% against Texas A&M. Those are the 2 of the 3 lowest field goal percentages they've ever had in a game under Kim Mulkey. So it just goes to show how those 2 games, they've really struggled offensively. And I think, Zach, if we could throw out, I think this is the stat of the day. Do we have any kind of like drum roll kind of sound or anything? I don't know if we have those technical capabilities.
We need to get sound effects in here, man. But
yeah.
I'll drum roll for you.
All right, that would be fun. All right, cool. So over the last 4 years under Kim Mulkey, the LSU women, when they hold their opponent to less than 40% shooting, they are 81-3. That's pretty crazy. One of those losses was Thursday. One of those 3 was Friday against South Carolina. LSU against South Carolina, they held South Carolina 37% shooting, and they won the rebounding battle by 12 rebounds. And they also grabbed 28 offensive rebounds. LSU usually wins those games, right? But because they only shot 30% from the field, they lost, and then it became one of those 3 games that they lose when they play defense like that. So I think looking forward for LSU, you want to see them play more efficient offense. You want to see their half-court offense work a little better, find some easier shots, maybe get to the lane, get to the free throw line. I think the last 2 games, their shots have really cooled off, and they really kind of struggled to score in the half court. So I think I'd be looking for LSU on Thursday to really find easier offense, because everything kind of looks difficult right now. It happens, once you get to that point in the season, but you don't want to let it snowball and into where you really get in a kind of rut, particularly when you're playing a good team like Oklahoma.
Yeah, Reed, just to ask you a quick question. Sorry about that, Zach. What do you think about the looks that Flau'jae got in the South Carolina game? Because it looked like he said things aren't looking too easy. Flau'jae still put up points. I think at least it led them in scoring that day. But I'm curious, what do you think of Flau'jae's game?
Everything was difficult. Every shot they took was a tough shot. It was a contested shot. And it wasn't just for Flau'jae. I think it was for everybody. It was for Anissa. It was for Michaela. I believe they shot only 11 of 29 on layups. So everything was tough. And when you're a team like LSU that plays lots of isolation offense, they're really heavy on ISO ball offensively. And you go up against a team like South Carolina that has 7 or 8 just like really exceptional one-on-one perimeter defenders who can really defend you on the perimeter, move their feet, prevent you from getting into the lane, prevent you from dribble penetrating, and then you've got shot blockers behind them. It's really tough, for an LSU team to generate easy offense like that, because South Carolina is so good defensively. There really isn't much you can do, even when you're a team like LSU that has a lot of good shot creators. So I'd be looking, if those 2 teams ever meet up again in the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament, hopefully they do. That would be really fun. I'd be looking to see how LSU fares in the half court offensively, and if they can find any kind of looks, any kind of actions that makes things easier on them. Because like you mentioned, it's a good point. Everything was difficult. Everything was so tough. And when everything's so tough, you're going to have a tough time finding easy, efficient offense. And I think that's one of the main reasons they lost.
And to be fair, South Carolina makes it tough on everybody. They went and beat Tennessee last night, so that's something that they do. By the way, Reed, I'm making an executive decision. Your stat of the day is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. So, we have the men, we have the women with these showdowns. Let's kind of go one by one and talk maybe some keys to. On the men's side, it would be a really big upset. Let's face it. The betting lines aren't out yet. I think Ken Pom has it as like a 15-point game, TJ. And I know, like, I looked at ESPN's BPI and they had 87% Auburn to win, or 86%. It would be a big upset. It's not impossible. I mean, Auburn has played close games. They very well nearly lost at South Carolina.
Yep.
They almost lost at home to Tennessee the other night. Now, Tennessee's a top team also, but this team's not invincible. And LSU showed they went toe-to-toe with Alabama for about 3/4 of that game. What do they have to do to stand up to Auburn, and where are they going to be challenged?
Yeah, no, for sure. I watched that Auburn game when they almost lost to South Carolina. Kind of came to some free throw misses in the clutch. So Auburn was on the ropes against a team that is at the bottom of the SEC. But when it comes to LSU beating this team, first you have to play strong defense. Auburn's incredible offense. You're not going to stop them, but you just have to limit them, similar to how you did with Alabama. They held Alabama to below their per game average. Alabama averages like 91 points. They scored only 80 against LSU. So do something similar in that respect, make it a sub 45% field goal percentage for Auburn overall. But more importantly, they do have to try to score and try to keep up with the offense, because even though Auburn's last game against Tennessee was a rock fight that was really close, that's unusual for an Auburn team, and Tennessee is as good of a defensive unit as you'll find. They just have a bit more defensive talent and tissue than LSU, even though LSU is good defensively. So yeah, with LSU, they have to be able to make shots. The Alabama game came down to just they didn't make enough 3-point shots. They only made 3 in the entire game, 1 in the second half. Alabama only made 7, but 7 is 4 more 3-pointers is a big difference in a basketball game. I think they need a big night, obviously, from Cam Carter. Cam Carter, he had, I believe, 16 or 17 points versus Alabama. Not the best efficiency, but was good enough and made timely baskets. Having a second scorer who was the leading scorer last time in Jordan Sears versus Alabama, that'll be really nice to see if he does that, a similar performance against Auburn. But they do need a third sort of weapon to have, whether that's a Corey Chest again, who was slowed down in the second half, or if that's a Damian Collins, who did have a sneaky 10-point, 5-rebound game against Alabama. But yeah, so the toughness has to be there, similar to how they did against Alabama, even more so in a way, because Auburn's just that good. They have Janai Broome, who's a National Player of the Year favorite, along with Cooper Flag. But they do have to just simply make shots, which sounds very simple, very easy to say. But LSU is shooting abominable. They're shooting, I believe, 26% from 3 right now, which is 3rd worst in SEC play. You just can't. It's hard to get it done, as well as they have to protect the ball, which they did in the first half against Alabama, but they finished with 14 turnovers, which is a little bit too many than what they want.
Yeah, it's a difficult matchup. Obviously, you look at some of LSU's stats, and they've really struggled to shoot the ball from 3 this year. They're much better inside scoring, but then you look at, like, again, citing Ken Pom here, Auburn has the number 4 defense in the nation at. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong stat. Number 7 defense in the nation at holding opponents at 2-point field goal percentage. So, like, your strength is also Auburn's strength defensively. So you're going to have to win some of those battles and, get those second chance points. Like you said, limit the turnovers and make sure that you're taking advantage of all of those opportunities. Today's keys to the game are brought to you by Associated Grocers. Join our team and support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. On the women's side, Reed, again, this is not a long shot like it is for the men. LSU probably expects to win this game at home. I think I dare say they expect to win every game they play, maybe even against South Carolina. That's just the attitude Kim Mulkey has with her team. But Oklahoma is going to be a challenge. They have beaten good teams. They're ranked number 13 for a reason. Where will Oklahoma challenge LSU, and what do the Tigers need to do to win this one?
Oklahoma, I think, will challenge LSU in pace. They really like to play fast. They really like to run up and down the floor. They have Reagan Beers, who's a really good interior presence that they got her out of the transfer portal. She was at Oregon State last year, and she hit the portal, amid all the conference realignment and all that. She came down to the SEC, and she really gave them some extra physicality that they needed to go up against the top teams in the SEC. So I'd be looking to see, maybe LSU goes small. I mean, maybe they put Anissa Morrow down low and really use that as a way to counter Oklahoma's pace and space. And if they do that, then they'll really need to have Anissa Morrow do a good job of keeping Reagan Beers off the glass, because she's a great rebounder. She's really good inside. Of course, I think Anissa Morrow can do that because she's the best rebounder in the country. But it'll be interesting to see how they fare. I think, Oklahoma, I mentioned they do like to play fast. I think that might actually play into LSU's strength because LSU wants to play transition offense. It's when they're at their best offensively. It's what they really want to do. And I think we've seen lately, things just get tough for them when they're forced to play a slow half-court game. When they're forced to play their half-court offense, most teams play them in a zone. We've seen LSU struggle with that. We've seen LSU have trouble getting into the lane, dribble penetrating, getting to the free throw line when teams play them like that. So I'd look to see if LSU can keep it a fast-paced game, keep running in transition, and then the times where they do get in the half court, to see if they can get into the lane easier, try to get to the free throw line, try to get the zone collapse and maybe hit open shooters. I'd like to see how LSU really fares in the half court, because that's one thing they'll need to get better at before March rolls around, And then there's another thing, Zach, foul trouble. Last two games, LSU's had major foul trouble, particularly with the 3 stars. I'd look to see if they can stay out of foul trouble and really keep those 3 on the floor at all times.
Yeah, just looking at some stats here, Oklahoma averages over 19 turnovers a game. So that is definitely a place where you can go get them. That's like sub 300 in the country. And LSU obviously very good at forcing those turnovers. And so I really do kind of like this matchup for LSU. Again, they can be a streaky team, as you said, but if they're going well, and on the flip side, Oklahoma lost by 40 points at South Carolina. And I'm thinking it was the same sort of thing where, Carolina makes it so tough on your offense that once that snowball starts rolling down the hill, it can be very difficult to stop for the Sooners. So they're a good team if they can play the game on their terms. But I think LSU could force this game to be played on their terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should also point out, we talked post-game, Zach, that South Carolina doesn't lose in their building in Columbia. They don't lose at home. They haven't lost at home since 2020. LSU also doesn't lose in the PMAC, really. They haven't lost an SEC regular season game against a team not named South Carolina since Kimmel. He's been there. So the PMAC is also a tough place to play. LSU's always good at home. They're always tough to beat at home. So that's one thing to keep an eye out if they can keep that streak going of wins in the PMAC against teams that are not named South Carolina, which is just on a different level than everyone else.
Yeah, you hate to throw too many caveats out in stats, but I think that one's okay.
Yeah,
that one's pretty tough. Flipping back to the men's side for a minute, I did want to mention this, and this was, look, Trey'Dez Green played 9 minutes. TJ, he had 2 points and I think 3 rebounds, 1 block, 1 turnover. Looking at the stats right now, he was 1 of 2 from the field. But man, what a one it was! It was just coast to coast. He blocks an Alabama shot, a 3-pointer, which is not easy to do to begin with, and then goes coast to coast, and you can see the little cutout right under TJ there on the screen. Like, just throws it down. And by the way, this is a football player, so I don't, maybe he changes the equation for LSU. They need big bodies with Jalen Reed out of there, and maybe he provides one. But even if he's not a good player, I mean, this is just, or not a main player, not a core player. This is just a really fun story, and I think it's something worth following the LSU men's team for.
Yeah, Zach. Oh man, I'm so happy I made the trip to Alabama. Even if LSU didn't, let's say, play as close to the game as they did, it may have been worth it just for this highlight, because this is his debut. This is a football star playing basketball, which doesn't always happen at this high level in athletics. And yeah, the block and dunk. Again, I'm not sure how it looked on TV. I didn't rewatch the game, but in person, I'm obviously yeah, in a road environment, they're not going to cheer for it. But me knowing sort of the LSU history and the background of this player more than the average fans, like, oh, whoa, like the block to the dunk was just like ludicrous. But yeah, to give a bit more background or a bit more detail. So after the bowl game, December 31st, Trey'Dez played versus Baylor, and he did his thing. He took a week off. He didn't do anything with basketball. Needed a rest and then reset. And then after that week off, he started doing some individual work on the in basketball. I'm sure with some sort of trainer or some sort of graduate assistant that was helping him out. Then after he got sort of his basketball legs under him a little bit, he then transitioned to doing some more things with the scout team. So not necessarily being a full practice player, but just helping LSU behind the scenes get better. And I think within the past couple of weeks or week and a half, he's gotten the full sort of practice with the LSU regular the main team that is obviously on the court that we see on a weekly basis. And yeah, he proved himself. He's rested. He's got his basketball brain and his self together. He made his debut in a little bit of a surprise against the best team arguably the best team that LSU's played, the highest ranked team that LSU has played thus far, and was in a road environment. And he didn't look fearful, didn't look shy. Obviously, the stat line isn't something to brag about, but the way he felt on the court didn't feel out of place at all. He didn't feel under athletic or under skilled. He's not going to be a ball handler shot creator, but he'll be your forward that grabs rebounds and plays hard on defense. And maybe if he can bring that physical presence as a 6'7", 240, 45-pound front court player that's weighs heavier than the other big men that LSU plays. One thing that McMahon did say yesterday was that he's really impressed with just how much he's fit and chemistry-wise with the team. He's someone that hasn't been around, obviously, because of football, but he has a personality, some sort of just way about him that makes people just feel comfortable. And he's fit right in as if he was with the team this entire year. And he still has a lot of learning to do, learning certain plays, certain situations. But I do think that he'll be remaining in the rotation, especially if they need a physical presence on the boards. And yeah, just who knows? He might surprise us and be even more impactful than we might assume.
Yeah, long history of tight ends who also play basketball, right, Zach? We can name some guys. Jimmy Graham, Antonio Gates, I believe Tony Gonzalez. So it makes a lot of sense. And obviously, Trey'Dez is an athletic freak of nature. I remember I covered one of his games when he was at East Feliciana playing football. I believe that was his junior year. And East Feliciana is a 2A school. And I remember their playbook was just to throw it up to Trey'Dez, and those poor kids on the other side, they didn't know. They couldn't match him. They couldn't handle him. I was like, all right, this kid is he's different. He sticks out from a crowd. So yeah, it's cool to see him on the floor. I think it's good that he's playing two sports, because I think he really likes basketball. I think he really likes football. He wants to do both, and it's probably better for him long term that he's doing both. It's really good that he's getting experience in both.
I don't think people.
Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
I'm sorry, TJ. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, I don't think people realize how crazy this is. I mean, it's hard enough to play SEC level football or basketball. To be playing as a freshman, to play football all year, have a big game in the bowl game, and then come in and find your sea legs. And we talk about how good the SEC is. He's finding his sea legs in SEC play, and maybe it's not a big impact yet, but I mean, my opinion is that if he can have that, he can have at least some kind of an impact right away. It's only going to grow from there, TJ.
Yeah, no, 100%. He has a little bit of that it factor. It's not, again, 2 points is 2 points, but the 2 points that he had in the first half really did light a spark and continue the run and the confidence that LSU played with in a raucous, rowdy Alabama arena. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to him at some point. Hopefully I can talk to him, or he's available to ask a couple questions. But yeah, just credit to him, not just his athleticism, but just his mentality to be able to learn on the fly and adapt to play basketball with a whole bunch of teammates that he's never played before or really played with until last month.
Is he left-handed? He's got to be, right?
I don't think he shot a jump shot, so I'm not fully certain, actually. I can't recall.
He dunked it left-handed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as he's taking up the court, he's mostly dribbling with his left hand, but he's got to be, because if he's not, then that's even crazier. But I think he's got to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'll try to watch
that-
him during warm-ups and see which hand he shoots with. Because with layups and dunks, sometimes it's not always your strong hand. But yeah, left-hand dunks are not really common for a righty.
Yeah, because it's kind of like watching a left-handed quarterback where you watch a left-handed dunk and you're going, that looked funny. You know, I mean, it almost makes it more impressive because it's different than what you normally see. So anyway, Trey'Dez Green, he's a lot of fun. And even though it's not the traditional definition of a star player, at least not yet, we are going to make him our star player. That's proudly sponsored by Waste Pro. Ensure your tailgate or event is a hit with clean and convenient portable toilets from Waste Pro. Rent yours today. We owe you a second break. When we come back, we're going to kind of zoom out and take a big picture look at these LSU basketball seasons on the men's and women's sides, and also the SEC at large. So we will be back right after this.
Experience the convenience and cleanliness that Waste Pro brings to Mardi Gras, LSU tailgates, and festivals with our top-notch portable toilet services. Perfect for large crowds and community events. Join the countless satisfied families and organizers who trust Waste Pro to keep their gatherings spotless and sanitary. Discover more about our services and make your next event a success at wasteprousa.com.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You gave me love.
Since 1988, Classic Industrial Services, Inc. has led the industry in specialty contracting. From thermal insulation to scaffolding, coatings, and beyond, we cover it all. Every minute matters in our commitment to quality and safety. We're here to serve with roofing, siding, heat trace, and refractory services. Visit classicindustrial.com for more information.
Okay, welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider talking basketball today. Men and women's LSU teams have really big games this week. Men against number 1 Auburn on Wednesday night. Number 7 LSU women face number 13 Oklahoma on Thursday night at the PMAC. So that building will be rocking both nights, I'm sure. Just to kind of give you an idea of how big these games are, we are going to go into our sports betting segment, which is brought to you by the Queen Casinos, DraftKings Sportsbook Bar, and 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails. With top-notch screens and live betting, it's the ultimate spot to watch your favorite teams and enjoy a cold brew or signature cocktail. The Queen Casino is the only land-based casino in Baton Rouge, and it's your go-to for game day or any day. Okay, guys, Auburn, on the men's side, is no less than the favorite to win the national title. Depending on where you look, DraftKings this morning, I think, had Duke slightly ahead of them, but they're neck and neck. It's Duke and Auburn. And then I was looking at another thing, TJ. Auburn is even money to make the Final Four. Now, we don't even know the bracket, and they're saying like they're 50-50 to make the Final Four. This is a really, really good team we're talking about.
Yeah, Auburn has proven himself as much as any team in the country. Only one loss to Duke. And yeah, Auburn, they have arguably the best player in the country, a whole lot of depth. I know a lot of them are fans of this point guard named Sahad Pettiford, who doesn't start for them, but he can be their best player depending on the night that you watch them or in a 5-minute stretch as a freshman. They have really good shooters, really good defenders. They have a player named Cardwell who's as blue collar of a front court player as you'll find, super physical, super tough. I'm excited to see how he matches up with an extreme athlete like Damian Collins and Corey Chest. But yeah, Auburn is deservingly so national title favorite. And yeah, I'm excited to, just as a fan of basketball, I'm excited to watch them up close and see how the team operates and see how Bruce Pearl, the coach of the team, leads them.
Yeah, like I'm super impressed with them. And part of it too is we mentioned that South Carolina game where Janai Broome went out with an ankle injury, and Auburn almost lost that game, but they hung on to win. They were almost playing better without him, and he's like the best player in the country. That's how deep they are. I can't remember exactly who they played in that stretch, but they were putting it on teams. I'm not sure Broom's back quite to 100% yet, but he's going to play Wednesday night, and I think I don't know. This is a really good team. And then, by the way, on the women's side, the national title favorite at less than 2-1 odds as South Carolina reads. This is like new territory for the SEC. They're going to go ahead and have national title favorites, and not just the favorite, but also multiple contenders. Because on the men's side, besides Auburn, you've got Alabama up there, you've got Tennessee, you've got Florida and Kentucky not too far back, and then on the women's side, you've got Texas and then LSU not too far down either.
Yeah, I think what was it, TJ? I think it was Jay Billis who said this week. He said, well, winning the SEC on the men's side is going to be tougher than winning the national championship. I believe. I thought that was a really good quote. Yeah, I think with the SEC, South Carolina obviously separated themselves. I think before the season started, we're looking at those 4 teams as a group where it was South Carolina, LSU, Texas, and Oklahoma. Now I think we can say that there's a little bit of separation in that group. South Carolina obviously belongs in a tier by themselves. If you just look at the last 5 games they've played number 5 Texas, number 19 Alabama, number 13 Oklahoma, number 5 LSU, and number 18 Tennessee, and they won all 5 of those games. The closest one was Tennessee, which was last night. South Carolina won 70-63, and that score is a little misleading because they were up double digits at that point later in the fourth quarter, and then Tennessee made a run. So basically pretty decisive double-digit wins over all 5 of those ranked teams. They obviously belong on a tier themselves. And then I think it's LSU and Texas. And we'll find out on Thursday exactly what Oklahoma is made of, because they lost by 41 to South Carolina, like we mentioned earlier. But how close are they to LSU? Was that an aberration? Was that an anomaly? I think we'll find out if they can give LSU a test. Then we'll probably see that 41-point loss is probably, probably just a little blip, probably just a little a game where they didn't play their best. So I'd be curious to see. I think we'll learn a lot about just the top half of the SEC on Thursday when LSU and Oklahoma play in the PMAC. But other than that, I think the only thing I can say confidently right now is that South Carolina is really, really good, and LSU and Texas aren't too far behind them.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Okay, so we started talking about this, but let's kind of go around the SEC. And the way I'm framing this, we're almost at the halfway mark. I think the women just have one more game to get to halfway through the SEC season. The men have a couple more. They play 18 games instead of 16 games. But we talked about a little less than a month ago, about what our expectations were in the SEC. And so I'm curious how your opinions have changed, whether it's just one team that you are higher or lower on, or whether it's the way the race is shaped up. Reed, you kind of gave your answer that those top 4 teams are separated into tiers. But I'm curious if there's anybody else who surprises you, and then TJ on the men's side.
Yeah, sorry, Zach, I jumped the gun there a little bit. Tennessee, I think I've been impressed by Tennessee. I think they're a little bit better than their record indicates. They've lost a lot of close games, man. I just really like the way they play. They play fast. They shoot a lot of threes. They press you. It's really a unique style of play. And I think they've lost a ton of close games. I think maybe if 1 or 2 of those games go a little bit differently, maybe we think about them a lot differently than we do now. Maybe they beat LSU, and we think about those 2 teams really differently. So I've been impressed by Tennessee. I think they're probably the 5th best team in the conference, depending what Oklahoma does on Thursday. We'll see. But I think Tennessee. We should also shout out their coach, Kim Caldwell. She had a baby last Monday, and she was back on the sideline a week later last night, Monday. Pretty remarkable. So they're. I think she's got them off to a great start. Dawn Staley was pretty complimentary of her and how they play last night after that game, and I think they're going to be a challenge in a situation like the SEC tournament, when really anything can happen when you have all kinds of teams going against each other and win or go home games.
And how about the men's side, TJ? What has stuck out to you?
Yeah, a few things. Teams that weren't seen as highly in the SEC, like Vanderbilt and Missouri, they are now ranked. They are now, in the case of Missouri, they're top 30 in KenPom, and at that point when LSU played them, they were somewhere in the 50s, not that far off from where LSU was. So yeah, it's crazy. The bottom of the SEC, the quote unquote bottom of the SEC, they're making waves in the AP poll. And that just shows you if you can win a couple quad one games like how Vanderbilt has and how Missouri has, you'll be able to quickly build that kind of momentum to get that recognition. One of my favorite teams to watch, just as a fan of basketball here, is Florida. They have a trio of guards and Clayton, Walter Clayton, Will Richard, and Elijah Martin. That's as good as you find in the country, even competitive against Auburn, as far as their guard depth and just how skilled those guys are. And also really good defensively. And they also, again, the SEC, Florida kind of gets lost in the shuffle when you talk about the Tennessees, the Auburns, even Alabamas of the world. But Florida is just as much of a threat for a national title run with their level of guard play and also really good physicality in the front court. So yeah, the SEC is loaded. That hasn't changed as far as what I knew before going into this conference play to now. But still, a lot can happen. We're not halfway through SEC play. This 18 total games in SEC play. We're not at the 9-game mark yet. So we'll see if there's some sort of slippage from other teams, and if, who knows, LSU may be able to pull off a little bit of an upset on one of these quad one games, maybe Wednesday, maybe a different one, and then who knows, they may make a rise.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, for one thing, you go on a 3-4 game winning streak in this conference, your NCAA tournament resume is going to look a lot different. And I'm not predicting that. That's obviously going to be a very difficult thing to do, but it is out there. I don't think you can totally write that off. And then the other thing was you mentioned Vanderbilt and Missouri. I think the last time we talked, TJ, was LSU was like 0-2 in the conference, and we're going, man, they lost to two of the worst teams in the conference. They're cooked. They're not going to beat anybody else. And now you look, and Vanderbilt has beaten Kentucky and Tennessee at home in the last couple of weeks. They're in the top 25. Missouri is in the top 25. They're 5-2 in the conference. They went to Florida and won, which I didn't think anybody was going to do this year. Those losses don't look nearly as bad as they did. And I'm not sitting here saying that LSU's in a rosy situation at 1-5, but they have played 4 of their 6 conference games on the road so far. So they got some home games, in the ledger. Now, obviously, you're facing Auburn tomorrow night. That's not going to be easy. But I wouldn't sit here and say, oh, they're going to finish 15th or 16th in this league, mark it down. They were in that home game against Vanderbilt. They won their home game against Arkansas. They're going to win some home games, and I wouldn't be too surprised if they pick off an upset or two on the road too. So I think this is a pretty good team. Unfortunately for them, they're in a really good conference, and every night is going to be a battle. They've had some injuries, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I wouldn't give up on it. I do think LSU is live tomorrow night against Auburn. And then, of course, the women play Oklahoma on Thursday. Guys, let's do some final thoughts here. First, I do want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Classic Industrial Services, proudly serving Louisiana and the entire United States. From large capital projects to commercial projects or your smaller quick response needs, Classic Industrial is your go-to for quality and safety. They're not just about business. They're a proud community partner, supporting local initiatives and helping build a stronger Baton Rouge. Because at Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. Reed, let's go with you first. What are your final thoughts kind of on this week and heading into the women's game Thursday against Oklahoma?
Final thoughts. I think LSU needs to play better half-court offense if they want to be in some of these games. We'll see how they fare against Oklahoma. But you shoot 30%, 32%. You're not going to win too many of your big games. So I think LSU can control its rebounding, it can control its defense. That should be consistent night to night. But you're probably looking to see them make more shots and find easier half-court offense. We'll see how they fare against Oklahoma. I think they probably bounce back a little bit. Those numbers probably regress a little bit to the mean, and they probably hit more shots. And I think they probably pull off a win if they do that. So we'll see how they fare in the half-court.
All right, and TJ?
Yep, for the men's side, to jump on you, Jack. For the men's side, regardless of the injuries, regardless of the glaring weaknesses when it comes to the turnover issues, the lack of rebounding on the defensive end at times this year, this LSU team, men's side, no quit. They don't care about the record. They don't care about opposing arenas. I was in Alabama, and that was as rowdy of an environment as I thought there would be. And LSU, they played favorably. They didn't trail by double digits until 2 minutes left, and then they continued the battle and made that a 7-point loss. So there's no quit in this team, and they're going to approach it the same way against Auburn based off how they looked against Alabama. And I'm excited to see if they can pull up one of these upsets at some point, and who knows, make a little bit of a win streak in this tough conference.
All right, so that's our show for today. Keep it locked here. All of your LSU sports coverage in podcast form on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, of course, in video form on Facebook and YouTube. Encourage you specifically to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's kind of the best way to get in touch with us via the comments section, posting other videos there all the time. It is the LSU Tigers at NOLA.com YouTube channel. So subscribe to that and hit the like button while you're down there. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Let us know how we're doing. So until next time, we'll be back later this week. But for now, for Toyloy, TJ Brown, and for Reed Darcey, I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for watching the LSU Sports Insider.